Today's topic is the important do's and don'ts of creating and deactivating users. And this should be a quick one, guys, because there are just a few important things to go over, but wanted to hit those. Really, we'll look at just things you want to be aware of when you're adding and deactivating users that can really impact things if you're not aware of them, okay? So let's hop over to Pipeline. First, let me talk about creating or adding users and a couple things to look out for. Let's head over to admin and then manage users. Now, when you're creating a new user or editing a user, the main thing I wanted to cover, which I'm sure you're already aware of because you've got these little hover tips over here, is that when you are giving an agent in particular permissions, that you don't give them staff level permissions or admin level permissions. And you'll see over on the right down below it says suitable for agents or not, right? So just being sure you're giving people the appropriate permissions, because if you don't, then they may have access to either transactions or general data, depending on where they're at, that they should not have access to. So just be sure, again, to adhere to make sure you're not giving an admin level permission. And as you can see here, it'll actually tell you if it's an admin level permission in addition to telling you over in the hover tip there. Okay, so basic stuff there. I know you're already aware of that, but wanted to make sure I cover that because that's pretty important. Also, kind of related to that is who can make master admin level changes. When you start your account, you've got the person who created the account is by default the master admin. From that point on, other master admins can be added, or that master admin can be changed, or master admins can be removed if you've added any. And to do that, you need to request that from us by sending us a message or just going to Get Help and shooting us a message. And we'll make that change from our end. But the person who needs to request that change needs to be a master admin. Okay, so in other words, only master admins can make changes to master admins. The exception to that is if there's an owner of the brokerage, say, they've got authority, even if they're not in the account, to make such a request. Okay, now that said, it makes it a lot easier if that owner, broker owner, or owner of the business is a master admin already, right? Because then we can look and see, yes, this person is a master admin. They've already got inherent permissions to be able to request those changes. Again, if they don't have that, they still have the authority, but it makes it a lot easier both on our end and on your end, because then you don't need to verify that that owner is indeed the owner. We don't need to research to confirm that that's the owner. It just makes it a lot easier and a lot quicker, particularly when you want such an important change to be made. So encourage you as master admins to make sure that your owner has a master admin profile in the system. If they don't want to see master admin data all over the place, that's fine. You can create a separate login for them that is their master admin that they can get into, and then at least, again, that's documented, so it makes it easier to verify that they have that authority. Okay. Lastly, related to that is when you're creating admins as users, right? You're adding a new user and maybe it's an admin. Just understanding what permissions an admin has versus permissions that a master admin has, right? Because sometimes we'll see people who give master admin permissions and we try to make sure that they're aware when it's not really needed. That person doesn't need full-on master admin permissions, because being a master admin gives you a lot. It gives you the ability to close down the account. It gives you the ability to delete notes, which is, you know, an audit trail thing. It gives you the ability to delete transactions. It gives you the ability to manage company information on company settings page, which transcends all locations if you've got multiple locations. So it's a pretty powerful permission. So if they don't need that and they really just need some admin level permissions down here, it's best to just give them that. So just be aware of what permissions a master admin has versus these permissions here. And if you head on over to our help site, there is an article that very nicely outlines master admin permissions, right? Exactly what they can do. There's also an understanding admins article. Breaks down the difference between location admins, master admins, and primary location admins. Okay, so that can be really helpful. But again, it can help prevent you from over giving permissions when it's really not needed. Alrighty. Okay, so that's all I want to go over regarding adding or creating users. Next, I want to talk about, even more importantly in some cases, well, I guess they're equally important, deactivating users. A few things to really be aware of. One is, let me head back over just to the manage users list. When you deactivate a user, which you can do from here, or once you click through to them, there's a field on that edit page as well. But when you deactivate a user, that's the most you can do. You cannot actually remove them. You can just deactivate them. And the reason is the system needs to maintain that user in the system because there's typically activity related to that user, right? They may be on transactions. They may have done some activity that shows up in the transaction history, etc. So important that that user remains intact. So if they are no longer active, you just need to deactivate them. Okay. That said, sometimes we'll get users who have a new user coming in replacing an existing user, and instead of deactivating that user, they'll just change that user's information to the new person, right? Maybe they're both admins and they don't want to have to reset the permissions for the new person because it already exists for the old person, so they just go ahead and change the name and the email address, etc. We strongly discourage that, / really would like to forbid that if we could, because like I said, there may be activity associated with a particular user, right? Transactions created, there are agents on transactions, etc. And if you change that person's name, then that activity starts to be associated with that new person, right? When that new person didn't actually do it. They didn't delete that doc, or they didn't do whatever, right? So important to not recycle them because you lose that audit trail that I was just talking about, right? Having that independent thread of who has done what. So you definitely don't want to recycle those users. Just create a new one for the new person and deactivate the old one that is no longer needed, okay? So the last thing is when you are deactivating, just be aware, and you'll get a message when you do go to deactivate them. Let's go into this user. When I change them to deactivated, it will alert me, hey, you sure you want to deactivate them? Their mail drop address will be deactivated as well, right? Because they're not going to be an active user anymore. And again, it alerts you of that, but the important thing about that is sometimes we'll get users who have scanners or other contacts associated with this particular mail drop address. They deactivate the user, and then suddenly when they go to scan things into Pipeline, they don't get there, right? So just be aware whenever you're deactivating someone that you're also deactivating any mail drop addresses associated with them that are used elsewhere. Okay. And that's it.